Hello, and welcome to Conversations with the Candidates. My name is Wes Slate. I'm a former city councilor and council vice president and retired city clerk. Today we're interviewing all five candidates for councilor at large who would represent the entire city. And my guest now is incumbent councilor at large, Julie Flowers. Welcome, Julie.
Welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Wes. It's nice to see you again.
Same. Julie, I want to give you a couple of minutes before we start with the questions to introduce yourself to people that may not know you in Beverly and why you're running again for councilor at large.
Great. Thank you. So I am, as Wes said, one of the incumbent city councilors at large, and I'm running for re-election to what would be my third term. I grew up in Beverly. I grew up in Ward 3. And have lived here much of my life. I always say I moved around a little bit, just around Massachusetts, but always knew I wanted to come back to Beverly because of what a great place I had found it to be to live and to grow up. And so wanted my son Emmett to be able to grow up here. And he's now 10. He's at Beverly Middle School as a fifth grader. And so I have really enjoyed in my first two terms the chance to get to know people in the community that I hadn't met before, to hear people's stories, to work together with other elected city officials and with many amazing volunteers who serve on our boards and commissions in Beverly to figure out how we can hear people's stories, try to meet people's needs, solve problems for people. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm running again, because I think that good work that we're doing together, the people of Beverly and the people elected to represent them, is not finished and will never be finished, right? You're always creating community the way that we hope to see it, but it's been a real honor and a real privilege to serve people. And I think there's good work yet to be done. And so I'm running for a third term to hopefully continue to be part of that work.
Julia did a great intro and mentioned being a Beverly native and Emmett, and I can't believe he's in middle school.
I can't believe that either.
But you didn't mention your day job. You have another job that occupies a lot of your time that many people may be familiar with.
You're right. I failed to mention my day job. I am one of the ministers, actually right now, the minister. We're in sort of a transition time at First Baptist Church in Beverly, which is on Cabot Street. It's the brick church with the big white steeple. And so people may also be familiar with it if their children went to Harbor Light Nursery School. That's located there in that building. And we've done a lot of sort of outreach community building, working together with the community over the years that predates my time there, certainly.
So between City Hall and the church, you're within a block of each other on your various jobs. Julie, the candidate, as you know, who receives the most votes for council at large becomes council president for the next 2 years. That's unique to our charter. It's similar to Boston's. What's your view of that position? How do you see the council president relating to the mayor, their administration, and the residents and businesses of Beverly?
Yeah, I think it is so interesting in Beverly that voters do have a hand in choosing who will be the council president. As you said, it's not typical in most communities in Massachusetts. And so I think it gives the position of council president in Beverly sort of a really special and unique role where it's sort of extra accountable to voters. Voters have helped decide who that person will be. But I also think the council president role is one that really can help to set the tone for the council, becomes sort of the holder of that space. I think one of the things that's really important, and that I think we've seen President Guanci do really well in his time as president, which, he's served in that role for quite some time, and thank you to President Guanci for that work. I always say he really understands how to hold the space for people, not just for the councilors, but for members of the public who might be speaking, for those who are coming to present for public hearings. I think having a president who really can hold the space and run the meeting well actually helps us then to be able to have some of the really important conversations that we need to have. So I think a council president sets that tone, creates that space where people can feel that they understand how is the meeting going to run? When is my turn to speak? Members of the public, when is it time to speak in a public hearing? Inviting people to feel comfortable doing that, I think that's really important. And I think then can really be one of the liaisons. Certainly councilors all relate, as you know very well, to the mayor and mayor's administration on their own and in their own right, but I think the council president can help to really be a great conduit between the mayor's office and city hall and the council, and really establish that relationship, because so much work does go back and forth between those two bodies.
The other somewhat unique part of that position, and we saw this play out in Boston recently, is that if the mayor's absent by our charter, which is basically the city's constitution, if the mayor's absent from the city for 3 days or more, the council president becomes acting mayor, because someone has to be in that position.
Sure.
And in the same way as in Boston, if the mayor for some reason has to leave the position, then the council president becomes acting mayor. And our charter says that because the council president is someone who has run citywide, as the mayor does, and not as a ward councilor who would only represent 1/6 of the city. Julie, Beverly Main Streets, you know well, and has a new executive director with Jen Wallace's retirement. What role do you see that person and that organization playing in the future of the city, and also the Greater Beverly Chamber of Commerce, which is a separate organization with a different mission, but both very involved in the community?
Yeah, I think both Beverly Main Streets and the Beverly Chamber have been, and I see them as continuing to be incredibly important here in Beverly. And I want to just take a moment and say publicly a thank you to Jen Wallace, too, for her excellent work, well-deserved retirement. And thank you, Jen. I hope you enjoy some time to relax and get some rest. I think Beverly Main Streets has been a creative kind of vision-setting force and organization, and that's where I hope we can continue to lean into that relationship together, to continue to reimagine how our downtown might thrive and continue to be a strong arts district. I think that's been one of the things that we've really seen in recent years, the Beverly Arts District grow and expand. There's now a new artist in residence program that's just beginning, and so I'd love to see us continue to lean into those sort of creative vision setting moments with Beverly Main Streets. And also, they've been a great conduit to helping us, as city leaders, understand how we can support our businesses, which is the role that I think the chamber plays really effectively as well. And we know that our small businesses, our local businesses, are such an important part of our Beverly community. And I think as we see, Rantoul Street still has new businesses coming in. I think there may be other parts of Beverly where we'll keep seeing new businesses grow and change. And so a strong relationship with the chamber as well, so that those of us who are elected to serve can really understand from our business leaders, many of whom are themselves also local and residents, their staff are local and residents, and how can we help to work together to create a Beverly that really is thriving, is supportive of them, and helps to create the kind of downtown and in our neighborhoods, in our different wards where we have little sort of business centers that are supported and thriving and healthy.
The chamber and Main Streets obviously have different roles, in that Main Streets is geographically specific to the downtown generally, whereas the chamber is Greater Beverly. It's not just Beverly, but it's the surrounding communities, and a larger but similar role. Beverly's also home to Endicott College and Montserrat College of Art, the Cabot, the LARCOM, and North Shore Music Theater. What role do you see those institutions as cultural educational institutions playing in the city, and the relationship to the council in the city?
Yeah, I think we're so lucky to have those different institutions and organizations. We can already see what an impact they've made, right, on Beverly. When I was mentioning the Arts District, Montserrat has been a huge part of that. The Cabot being downtown, the LARCOM, that's been a big part of that, and has created really a draw, I would say, to Beverly, not only for people who live here, but people from all around are coming into Beverly for the arts district, for the art scene, for the fine arts and the graphic arts that Montserrat students are helping to infuse our city with, for shows at our different theaters. The music theater, of course, has long been a draw, but now we've got more expansive sort of arts happening downtown. And I think similarly, Endicott has played an important role in really being a great community partner. These organizations are not just helping to create part of the culture of who our community is, and bringing, in the case of Montserrat and Endicott, young people are here. They become part of our community. They add to it. We learn from them. We grow because of them. But all have really been amazing community partners too. And by that I mean, in the cases of some of the nonprofits, the schools, they make payments in lieu of taxes. They donate money to support main streets and initiatives that we're undertaking. And so I think have shown that they're here to be part of the Beverly community and to do good work together in creating the kind of downtown and the thriving neighborhoods that we want to see. And so that's the relationship that I see us continuing to build together, that they are helping us to create a thriving downtown, a thriving arts scene, bring people from the region here for entertainment, for shows, for art, and also working together to support the kinds of programming that's happening both on campuses, in theaters, and on our streets.
Two specific parts of that, Julie. Development obviously has been a big issue in Beverly. How much development, where, and what type? And Beverly's waterfront specifically is, I'd say, a work in progress, to be generous. What do you see happening on the waterfront, and how do you see development happening in Beverly in the future? So development generally and the waterfront specifically.
Yeah, this is probably one of the biggest questions or issues that most people in Beverly, I think, are feeling, no matter where they live. So I think you're right. I think our waterfront has been a work in progress, is a nice way to put it, for some time. I think the next piece of waterfront property that's probably a hot topic right now is the Bass River. And the question at hand for us, and Beverly residents may have already sort of tuned in to this, to some of the meetings, is whether or not to rezone that area. And I think that's it's a confusing conversation because for most of us going about our day, we don't necessarily think about zoning as the first piece of what happens. We think about the development, we think about the buildings that we see. But this question with the Bass River right now is, will we decide as a community to rezone it from strictly industrial to allow for more uses, which would potentially put other kinds of housing there, multi-unit housing, and other kinds of use. And then I think with that, the question becomes, well, then, as you said, how much development, what does it look like, and what's too much, or what do we want to be thinking about? I think on our waterfront, I think Bass River is a good example. We've got areas that are restricted by what's called Chapter 91, which is a state restriction that has to do with waterfront areas and what can be built and how far back or what kind of use. So along that part of the Bass River, if we decide to rezone, there you'll see areas where the only thing that really is allowed is water-dependent use. So that might be, a marina or somewhere where public boat slips could exist and people could come and then take part in other activities, further back from the water.
I think you're right that there's a fair amount of interest, not just in development, but the Bass River development specifically. Just recently, the city sponsored an open meeting. I think it was on Zoom.
Yes.
Or Google Meeting or whatever, on the Bass River. And I think there were almost 100 people or individuals or groups that were involved in it. So if you get 100 people to show up for any kind of meeting, even remotely, that I think represents a fair amount of interest. Julie, I think we'd be remiss today if we didn't talk about the recent, your reaction to the recent incident of overt racism at the school committee meeting last month. Do you think, in your various roles, do you think systemic racism, and you're in Beverly native, is present in Beverly? And what can the council, I know the council president made a statement at the next meeting that you had representing all of you currently serving on the council about that incident. Going forward, what do you think the council can do about the presence of systemic racism in Beverly if in fact you think that it's here?
Sure. Yeah, I think that systemic racism exists in Beverly because I think it exists everywhere. So I think this is not a unique to Beverly problem for us to tackle, but I think in Beverly we need to tackle it because it's everywhere. That means it's also here. And I think we see it in ways that are overt, and we see it, or sometimes we don't see it. Those of us, who the system privileges, those of us with skin the color of yours or mine, sometimes we go through our day and we don't see it happening around us. So I think your question is a good one, which is then what can we do about it, and specifically what can elected leaders do? So, backing up, I'm going to give you one looking back, and then I'll say what I think we can do going forward. You mentioned the statement that President Guanci made on our behalf. Right. I think that's part of, being unafraid to speak and address these issues, I think is a big piece of it. Backing up a little, the council passed a resolution 2 summers ago asking the mayor to declare racism a public health issue. And then that did happen. That proclamation did follow, because what I think we're coming to understand, those of us who haven't lived it, are coming to understand better that systemic racism affects health in every way. It affects people's wealth. It affects people's housing. It affects people's ability to be food secure. And so then, and it increases stress level for our friends and neighbors of color in our community. Living with levels of stress all the time is bad for our health. It puts cortisol into our system. So in a very real way, it's a health issue. But in addition, in addition
to the council's statement by the council president, the mayor put a statement out.
Yes.
School committee obviously did. I know there were a number of letters to the editor in the local paper, in the Salem News. If I'm not mistaken, I think I'm going to get the name of the organization wrong, but the ministers and the religious representatives of the various religious organizations in
the
Beverly.
Multi-Faith Coalition.
Thank you,
Yep.
Multi-Faith Coalition. I think I know you've been involved with that group. There was you also had a statement in the paper on the same subject, so it's clearly one that needs some attention from all levels. Along with that, when city government is generally communicating with residents, what steps do you think can be taken to improve communication, not just on that issue, but generally citizens and businesses' interaction with city government, city administration, the city council, school committee, communication as a general issue?
Yeah, I think communication for our city is a struggle. We have a lot going on, and in some cases, a lot of people trying to all communicate about it, separately. You've got councillors trying to communicate on our sort of networks, and you've got the mayor's office trying to communicate. So one of the things that I have thought a lot about, and this would be a budget decision, and we'd have to talk about it together, but in cities like Salem, for example, across the bridge, they have a position on the city side and school side of their government that is a communications director. And that person really makes sure that communication is coming out from that department. And I think as our city grows, as we get more and more busy, I do think that's something that, from my perspective, we need to consider, because I think we have a lot of people trying hard to communicate in their separate circles right now. But I often think with many things, and communication's no different, when it's everyone's job, in some ways it's also nobody's job. And so as people are busy, if the communication doesn't happen because they were busy or it happens late, they weren't really the one person responsible for it. So I think it's a detriment, because I think we have residents who want information, and we don't have one consistent channel where it's being put out by someone for whom that's their primary responsibility.
You said consistency too, and the danger with those multiple channels is that the city, the individual resident or business doesn't necessarily see a consistent message being put forward when there are competing or different interests that are put out for different reasons.
Absolutely, yeah.
As a coastal community, climate change may affect us greatly in the long or even the near term. I know the city's doing a lot of things on that issue, but what do you think the city should be doing to address climate change as a coastal community?
Well, one of the things that I think we're doing right now that I feel really excited about, and one of the things that I would be excited to continue working as part of if I am elected to a third term, is that we're working now together with our neighbors in Salem on a project called Resilient Together.
Right.
Some folks may have already been part of a focus group or read more about that. But I think it's really important actually to think regionally when we're thinking about climate change and how we protect our community, because as with other issues like affordability, they're regional. And so Beverly, we can tackle some of these things, and we have. Beverly has moved away from having plastic bags. Before the pandemic, we were beginning to talk about removing polystyrene from our city, a polystyrene ban, and then the pandemic came. And so I think you'll see those kind of small actions that we can take as a city come back. But I think doing things that we're doing with our neighbors in Salem, where you think more regionally about how we can protect and also build up our coastline to ensure that we're ready for a storm surge. That's going to be really important, because one community alone, we have our piece to play, but we need to be thinking regionally about how we protect our shared coastline.
I want to make sure you have time for a closing statement, Julie, so I'll do we'll call it a lightning round.
Okay.
Beverly's completed many capital projects, from the schools, obviously, to the new police station just recently. What do you think the next major capital project should be? I know the city has a capital improvement program that extends over 5 years, even 10 years, but what's the next big project the city should undertake?
Yeah, I think this is not exactly the same. Well, I have two. I think we need to continue to think about now we've got our police station, central fire station. It really is also in need of repair, and we've got firefighters who both work and live there on their shifts, and I think we need to really be paying attention to that. I think this is slightly different, not exactly capital project in that way, but I think we've got some paving to catch up on from years in the past, and I know lots of residents have streets they can make great cases for. I would like to see us really put some concerted effort into trying to do some catching up there. Okay.
Beverly will celebrate 400 years since its settlement with Salem back in 1626, only 5 years from now. What's the city doing to prepare for that, or what do you think the city should do to prepare for that big event of 400 years?
Yeah, I think so far there's just really initial conversation happening, but I think the first thing I'd love to see us do is really connect with Historic Beverly, with our friends at Historic Beverly. They are a wealth of information. They have so many of course, the primary documents and and care for our most historic properties. So I think for me that needs to be our first step. Is let's partner with them. Let's use their resources and the incredible wealth of information they have to be able to really celebrate and highlight those moments of our history. And then, partner with organizations like Beverly Main Streets and others to also highlight where we're going.
You've served as a councilor at large for 2 terms, seeking a third, and you've also served with ward councilors. How do you see those 2 roles being similar or being different?
Yeah, I think ward councilors, in my view, I try to work with my ward councilor colleagues as they are the primary, I think, touch point for issues that are related to a specific ward. So I often will get included on conversation from a resident of a ward about something that's happening that's very ward specific. And I always try to start by reaching out to my ward council colleague, asking where they're at with this constituent and how I can help be supportive. There are times then when I will step in and pick up sort of more of the follow-up and the work, but I really do like to work as a partner with the ward councilors and really let them be the first point of contact with their most direct constituent.
And the council, as you know, elects the city clerk that runs that operation and also chooses the budget management analyst. It used to be Kathy Griffin. The last couple of years has been Jerry Perry, who has access to all city finances, department heads, and literally, as the clerk does, works for the council, not for the mayor, not for the school committee. How do you see those 2 roles being supportive of the council and in your experience and going forward, those two positions that really belong to the council, not to the administration?
I think those are both incredibly important roles of support. You have a lot of experience in that clerk one as well. So I think thinking about the ways that a city clerk helps to make sure that the agenda is set with the council president, of course, and that's important for what we talked about, holding that meeting space and making a clear meeting for residents and councilors alike. But also really is such a point of resource for being able to locate an ordinance if we're working on amending something or want to look back and see what specifically the language is. So that's such an important partnership. And similarly, the budget analyst, really, from my perspective, is a position that can help us dig in and make sure that when we're looking at the budget that comes from the mayor's administration, that we have a clear, objective voice that can help us as councilors really evaluate what we're looking at and what recommendations we might make as councilors.
Well, Julie, I want to give you a couple of minutes to give your closing statement directly to your constituents and the potential voters. I did want to mention on your Historic Beverly reference that you probably know this anyway, but a lot of the original documents that you mentioned, in addition to Historic Beverly, are in possession of the 2 oldest churches in the community, the Unitarian Church and First Baptist Church, along with that large collection of historic documents that the city clerk has custody of and responsibility for. So I really appreciate you coming in today, and I appreciate you being willing to answer these questions. I do want to give you a couple of minutes to give a closing statement and ask for support.
Thank you. So I would be so honored to be elected to a third term as one of your city councilors at large, representing the entire city. So whatever ward you live in, I am one of the elected officials right now who represents you. And it has been a privilege thus far. And I would value and appreciate your support on November 2nd when you go to vote. In the councilor at large race, it's an interesting one. You will see all 5 candidates listed, and you as a voter have a chance to support up to 3 of us with your vote. And so I would love the chance to continue to get to meet you where you're at, hear your stories, listen to your ideas about the community that we're building together, and continue to do the best that I can to bring the resources that the city has and that the council has to solve problems with you and for you. So my name is Julie Flowers, and I would be very grateful for your vote on November 2nd. And thank you so much for the 2 terms so far. It's been an honor.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you so much, Wes.
This has been Conversations with the Candidates. There'll be a graphic up shortly that will give you the dates and specific information on the city election coming up in a couple of weeks. And thank you for tuning in.